Picture the worst punishment you can imagine. Not death. Death would be merciful, something that goes on every morning, every single morning for 30,000 years. You are chained to a mountain, iron and stone. You cannot move, you cannot turn away. And every morning at dawn, you hear it, wings, enormous wings, coming from the direction of the rising sun. Every morning, the same wings, the same sound, and you know exactly what comes next. Because it has come before. It came yesterday and the day before. It has come every single day. For as long as you can remember, and it will come tomorrow and the day after and the day after that for 30,000 years. The eagle lands, and it begins. Now here is the detail that changes this from a terrible story into something almost incomprehensible. The person chained to that mountain is a god, immortal, which means he cannot die, which means the eagle can eat whatever it wants, and by the next morning it has all grown back, ready for the eagle to return, ready for it to start again. 30,000 years of this every single day. And the god chained to that rock did not commit murder. He did not start a war. He did not betray his people or destroy a city. He did not seize power or break a covenant or do anything that any reasonable moral system across any culture in history would consider genuinely wrong. He gave fire to human beings. That was his crime, giving warmth to people who were cold, light to people who were in the dark. The ability to cook food, to forge tools, to see in the night, to survive winter, to do more than survive, to build. And for that, Zeus sentenced him to 30,000 years of daily agony. Let that number sit for a moment. 30,000 years. Human beings have been speaking language for roughly 100,000 years. The first cities appeared about 7,000 years ago. Writing was invented around 5,000 years ago. The Roman Empire lasted roughly 500 years. The United States is 250 years old. 30,000 years is 6 Roman empires back to back. With room to spare, that is how long the eagle came. Every morning for every one of those days, and every night the liver grew back. So it could happen again. So it could always happen again for 30,000 years. This is the story of Prometheus, the god who looked at the most powerful force in the universe and decided he would rather be chained to a mountain than watch human beings suffer in the dark. The god who chose this, who knew exactly what was coming, who did it anyway. And the question that has haunted this story for 3,000 years is the same one it asks you right now. Was it worth it? Before we get to the fire, before we get to the rock and the eagle and the 30,000 years, you need to understand who Prometheus was. Because the simplified version of this story makes him sound like a thief, rebel who broke a rule and got punished. The real version is considerably more complicated and considerably more interesting. Prometheus was a titan, not a god in the Olympian sense. Something older. The Titans were the generation of divine beings who came before the Olympian gods, before Zeus, before Hera and Athena and Apollo and all the gods of the Greek pantheon as we know them. The Titans were the original rulers of the cosmos, enormous, primordial, ancient forces that governed the world before the current divine order existed, the children of Uranus and Gaia, sky and earth. Prometheus was the son of Iapetus, one of the great Titan lords, and a goddess named Clymene or Themis, depending on which ancient source you read. He had brothers, Atlas, who would later be sentenced to hold the weight of the sky on his shoulders for eternity, Menoetius, who was struck down by Zeus's lightning bolt for his arrogance, Prometheus, whose name means afterthought, the one who acts and considers the consequences afterward, and Prometheus himself, whose name means forethought, the one who thinks ahead, the one who sees what is coming before it arrives. Some ancient sources credit Prometheus with something even larger than stealing fire. They say he created humanity, that he shaped the first human beings from clay, that he looked at the earth and saw it filled with animals and decided something was missing. Something that could think, that could build, that could aspire to something beyond pure survival. So he made us, from clay and water and the earth itself. And Athena breathed life into what he had made. In this version of the story, the fire that Prometheus stole was not just a gift to strangers. It was a gift to his own creation, to beings he had made, who he felt responsible for, who he could not watch suffer in the dark while Zeus held the one thing they needed. Whether you believe he created humanity or simply championed it, the essential fact is the same. Prometheus looked at human beings, and he chose them over everything else, over his position, over his safety, over his freedom, over 30,000 years of mornings without pain. Now, his name, forethought, the one who sees what is coming. This was not just a label, it was his defining characteristic, his entire nature, his weapon, his gift, and eventually his deepest, most particular curse. Because here is what foresight actually means. Not prediction, not guessing, the actual ability to see consequences before they happen, to understand the full chain of events that a decision will produce. Every repercussion, every cost, every morning with an eagle for 30,000 years. Prometheus knew. He knew what the punishment was going to be. He could see it. He chose to steal the fire anyway. Not in ignorance, not in hope that he might get away with it. With complete, total knowledge of exactly what Zeus was going to do. And he did it anyway. That is the detail that changes the whole story. This is not a tragic hero destroyed by his blind spot. This is a being who could see clearly and chose suffering anyway. Because the alternative was watching people he loved suffer instead. And he could not do that. He always knew. He knew before he took the fire. He knew before he hid it in the fennel stalk. He knew before he carried it down the mountain. He chose the mountain. Now, here is the first thing about Prometheus that most people get wrong. He was not always on the side of humanity. He was not always in opposition to Zeus. In fact, at the most critical moment in the history of the universe, Prometheus fought for Zeus, the Titanomachy, the war between the Titans and the Olympians. 10 years of cosmic warfare between the old divine order and the new, between the generation that had ruled and the generation that wanted to rule. Most of the Titans fought for their own kind, against Zeus, against the Olympians. Prometheus looked at both sides, calculated the outcome. He had the gift of foresight. He could see how this was going to end. He advised his fellow Titans to use cunning instead of brute force. They wouldn't listen. They were going to fight the way they always fought, with power, with size, with the assumption that the largest force wins. Prometheus saw that this would fail. And so he did something that cost him everything among his own kind. He switched sides. He fought for Zeus. He helped the Olympians win the Titanomachy. He was rewarded for this. He was brought into the inner circle of the new divine order. He had Zeus's ear, his trust, his friendship. Prometheus was not an outsider. He was an insider who chose to act like one. And this is the detail that gives the story its real weight. Because when Prometheus eventually defied Zeus, he wasn't a rebel fighting the system from outside. He was a former ally, someone Zeus had trusted, someone who knew exactly what he was doing and chose to do it anyway. The first time Prometheus defied Zeus, he did it with a bull. In the early days of the divine order, there was a gathering at a place called Makona. Gods and mortals together assembled to forge the terms of their relationship, to decide what belonged to the gods and what belonged to humans. One of the central questions was sacrifice. When humans killed an animal and offered it to the gods, what parts went to the gods? What parts did the humans keep? Prometheus was in charge of dividing the offering. He took a bull, he slaughtered it, and he divided it into two piles. Pile 1, the bones. But he covered them beautifully. He wrapped them in gleaming white fat. So they looked rich, appealing, substantial. Pile 2, the actual meat, the organs, everything edible, everything nutritious. He covered this pile in the stomach lining and skin, so it looked ugly, unappealing, like the lesser portion. He presented both piles to Zeus. He said, "Choose which portion belongs to the gods." Now, Zeus was not fooled. The ancient sources make this clear. He could see through the trick. He knew exactly what was in each pile. But he chose the bones anyway. He was furious. He knew he had been mocked. But he had made his choice, and the terms were set. From that point forward, in Greek religious practice, the bones and fat went to the gods, the meat went to the humans. Every time a Greek sacrificed an animal to the gods for thousands of years, they were repeating the consequences of Prometheus's trick. Zeus's response to this was immediate. He did not punish Prometheus directly. Not yet. Instead, he did something more calculated. He withheld fire from humanity. Now here is the piece of this story that most people miss. Humans had possessed fire before. This was not Zeus giving them something new. This was Zeus taking something away, as punishment for being tricked, and what that meant for the human beings on Earth was catastrophic. We use fire so casually now that it is almost impossible to feel what its absence would mean. You turn on a stove, you press a button, you light a match, you have warmth and light and cooked food within seconds. The idea that any of this could be taken away feels abstract, almost theoretical, but strip it away. Strip away fire completely. From a population of people living in an ancient world, without technology, without any alternative, raw meat, cold nights, no light after dark, no ability to forge metal, no kilns for pottery, no way to produce the materials civilization requires, no protection from the cold that kills, no warmth for children, no light for seeing, just darkness and cold, and the slow, grinding difficulty of living without the one thing that separates human survival from the survival of animals. Aeschylus, the playwright who wrote the most famous version of this story, puts words in Prometheus's mouth about what he saw when Zeus took fire away. He says he looked at humanity and saw creatures who had eyes but could not see, who had ears but could not hear, who lived like ants in dark holes in the ground, confused, struggling, cold, without the tool that makes everything else possible. Prometheus watched this, and he could not stand it. He had foresight, he could see the future, he knew what human beings were capable of, he knew what they could become. And he knew that without fire, none of it would happen. They would suffer in the dark, because a god was angry about a trick. So Prometheus made his decision. Prometheus went to Olympus. He walked into the workshop of Hephaestus, the divine smith, the god of the forge, the place where the sacred fire burned, and he took some of it. He hid it inside the hollow stalk of a fennel plant, giant fennel, the kind that grows tall enough to conceal a flame inside its pithy center. He carried it out of Olympus. He carried it down to earth. And he gave it to humanity, not with great ceremony, not with announcement, quietly, secretly, a god smuggling fire in a plant stalk, because he believed the people who needed it deserved to have it more than the god who was withholding it deserved to keep it from them. Now, Aeschylus adds something to this story that Hesiod does not include. In the version from Prometheus Bound, Prometheus did not just give humans fire. He gave them everything that fire makes possible. He taught them to build, to think, to count, to write. He gave them mathematics, agriculture, medicine, the ability to navigate by stars, metalworking. He gave them the arts and sciences that would allow them to lift themselves out of the dark holes in the ground. He gave them, in Aeschylus's formulation, civilization, not a spark, a future. Plato, in his dialogue Protagoras, gives a similar account. He says Prometheus stole not just fire but also the technical wisdom of Hephaestus and Athena, the knowledge of how to use fire, how to make it work for you, how to turn it from a dangerous force into a productive one, because fire without knowledge of how to use it is just burning. Prometheus gave both, the flame and the understanding of what to do with it, and then he waited, because he knew exactly what was coming. He had foresight. He had always had foresight. He knew this was not over. Zeus looked down from Olympus, saw the fires burning on Earth, saw what had happened, and the response he chose was designed to be permanent. Before Zeus dealt with Prometheus directly, he decided to deal with humanity. He called Hephaestus. He told the divine smith to make something. A woman, the first woman, crafted from clay, made in the likeness of the immortal goddesses, beautiful beyond measure, but given gifts or curses by every god on Olympus. Aphrodite gave her beauty and desire. Hermes gave her a cunning mind and a deceitful nature. The Graces gave her charm. Athena taught her to weave and dress herself beautifully, every gift wrapped around something else, every surface quality concealing something underneath. Her name was Pandora, Pan, meaning all. Dora, meaning gifts, all the gifts, the woman who was given everything. Zeus sent her to Earth. Specifically, he sent her to Prometheus. Prometheus's brother, Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, the one who does not think ahead, the one who acts and then considers the consequences. Prometheus had warned his brother, do not accept any gift from Zeus, whatever he offers, whatever it looks like, whatever it seems to be, refuse it. Epimetheus did not refuse it. He saw Pandora, and he accepted her, and she came into the world of men with a jar, or in later traditions, a box, sealed, filled with everything that would make human life difficult. Disease, suffering, old age, toil, war, death, despair, every form of misery the gods could imagine. And Pandora opened it, whether from curiosity, whether from manipulation, whether from Zeus's design working exactly as intended. The jar opened, and everything inside entered the world, where it has remained ever since. Except for one thing, at the very bottom of the jar, one thing stayed: hope. Hope alone remained, sealed inside, not released into the world, still there. Ancient scholars have argued for centuries about what this means. Is hope a comfort? Is it the one thing that makes the rest bearable? Or is it a cruelty, a false promise that keeps suffering people enduring something they should resist? Is hope the final trap? That question has no settled answer, and Hesiod doesn't resolve it. He just tells you what happened. The jar opened. Everything came out. Hope stayed, and now Zeus turned his attention to Prometheus. Zeus sent two of his divine servants to arrest Prometheus, Kratos and Bia, power and force. These were not metaphors. These were not symbols or literary devices. These were actual divine beings whose entire existence was the physical enforcement of Zeus's absolute authority. Power and force embodied, walking, impossible to resist. They were what Zeus sent when he wanted something done, and there was no possibility of negotiation, no appeal, no delay. And he sent them for Prometheus. They brought Hephaestus with them, the divine smith, the god of the forge, the craftsman of Olympus who had built the palaces of the gods, who had forged the armor of Achilles, who had made the thunderbolts that Zeus himself carried, and who had made something else: adamantine chains, a material that ancient sources describe as harder than anything else in creation, unbreakable, designed specifically for holding beings that cannot be held by ordinary means, for holding gods against their will. Aeschylus opens Prometheus bound with the scene of the arrest. And the thing that makes it unforgettable is not Prometheus, it is Hephaestus. He does not want to do this. He stands on the desolate cliff in the Caucasus Mountains. He holds the chains. And he hesitates. He knows Prometheus. They are kin, fellow gods. He has sympathy for him. He can see what this is. He can feel what it means to chain a being of this magnitude to a rock for eternity. And Kratos, power, has no patience for this. Kratos is cold, efficient. He speaks the most chilling line in the entire play. He tells Hephaestus, all is toil, save to be lord of the gods, for none is free but Zeus. That line, written by Aeschylus 2,500 years ago. None is free but Zeus, not the gods, not the Titans, not Hephaestus, who is being forced to chain his own kinsman, not Prometheus, who is being chained, not anyone or anything in the entire cosmos, only Zeus, only the king. Freedom is the exclusive possession of power. Everyone else exists within the constraints that power imposes. Hephaestus chains Prometheus to the rock. He drives a spike through his chest to pin him to the stone face. He works. He does not stop working, but he does it slowly, and he does it apologetically. He tells Prometheus, against my will I must chain you, against your will to this desolate crag, against my will. That detail matters. Because Hephaestus is not a villain here. He is a craftsman, following orders from a power he cannot resist, doing something he finds wrong, doing it anyway, because none is free but Zeus. And then he leaves. And Kratos and Bia leave, and Prometheus is alone on the mountain, in the Caucasus, in the desolate wilderness, at the edge of the known world, chained, nailed, unable to move, the wind blowing across the rock, the sky above him, the earth below, fully conscious, fully aware, knowing exactly what was coming, because he had always known exactly what was coming. That is what his name means. Forethought, the one who sees ahead. He had seen this. He had chosen it anyway, and now it was here. 30,000 years. That is the number from Aeschylus, 30,000 years of daily torture. The eagle arrives every morning. It is Zeus's eagle, the emblem of the king of the gods, made by Hephaestus himself in some accounts, born from the monsters Typhon and Echidna in others. But always Zeus's eagle, always the same punishment. Every day it lands on Prometheus. It eats his liver. In the ancient Greek world, the liver was considered the seat of emotions, the center of feeling, the organ where your deepest inner life lived. So the eagle was not just eating an organ, it was eating the place where Prometheus felt things. His compassion, his love for humanity, the feeling that had driven him to take the fire. In the first place, every day, consumed, and every night, it grew back, because Prometheus was immortal. The ancient sources specify this carefully. By morning, he was fully restored, the liver completely regenerated so the eagle could return and do it again. 30,000 years. There are numbers that are too large to process. 30,000 years is one of them. The entirety of recorded human history covers roughly 5,000 years. From the earliest writing to now, everything that has ever been documented, every civilization that has ever risen and fallen, every war, every discovery, every king and emperor and revolution and invention. 5,000 years. Prometheus was chained for 6 times that. The pyramids of Egypt hadn't been built when the sentence began. They were ancient history before it ended. The Roman Empire rose and fell within the blink of an eye compared to what Prometheus endured. And through all of it, he was conscious. He was aware. He was thinking. He had foresight. Aeschylus has him speak from the rock. He talks to the sea nymphs who come to visit. He talks to the ocean god Oceanus, who offers to mediate. He refuses. He talks to Io, another victim of Zeus's cruelty. He tells her the future. He could see it. He names what is coming. He knows. And he still refuses to capitulate, because there is something Prometheus knows that Zeus does not know. And that something is Zeus's only vulnerability. Here is the thing that changes everything about this story. Prometheus was not just suffering on that mountain, he was winning because he held a secret. And that secret was the one thing in existence that Zeus feared more than anything else. Zeus was afraid, not of Prometheus, not of any immediate threat. He was afraid of a prophecy, the same kind of prophecy that had defined every generational transition in the Greek cosmos. Cronus had overthrown his father Uranus to become ruler of the gods. Zeus had overthrown Cronus to become ruler of the gods. And there was a prophecy that Zeus would be overthrown in turn by a son born to a specific woman, a son who would be greater than his father, who would do to Zeus exactly what Zeus had done to Cronus, what Cronus had done to Uranus, the pattern repeating, the cycle completing, the king who overthrows his predecessor, eventually overthrown himself, and Prometheus knew who that woman was. He had been told by his mother. He knew the specific sea nymph whose son would bring Zeus down. He held that name, that prophecy, like a weapon, like the one chip he had in the game. Zeus could not simply kill Prometheus, even if he wanted to. First, you cannot kill an immortal. Second, and more practically, he needed that information. Without it, he might inadvertently father the very son who would destroy him. Without knowing the woman to avoid, he might already be sleeping with her. The anxiety that Prometheus's secret created in Zeus was enormous. He wanted the information. He wanted it desperately. He just wanted it without having to admit that Prometheus had been right about anything, without having to show weakness, without giving the Titan any satisfaction. So the eagle kept coming, and Prometheus kept refusing, because the secret was leverage. And the leverage was the only power Prometheus had left. And he knew, as he had always known, because foresight was his gift, that the leverage would eventually be enough. That Heracles was coming, that release was coming, that the 30,000 years would end. He had always known. Heracles, the greatest hero in the Greek world, son of Zeus and a mortal woman, performing his legendary 12 labors as penance for an act committed in a moment of divine-sent madness. In the course of those labors, he passed through the Caucasus. He saw the mountain. He saw what was on it, a god, chained, an eagle arriving, and the process beginning again. Heracles killed the eagle. He notched an arrow. He fired. The eagle died, and then he broke the chains with his hands, because Heracles was the son of Zeus, born with the strength to do what no other mortal could do. He pulled the spikes from the rock. He freed Prometheus. Was this against Zeus's will? The ancient sources say no, Zeus permitted it. He allowed his son to perform this act. And the reasons he allowed it are a combination of things. His love for Heracles, his desire to increase his son's glory, his willingness, after 30,000 years, to end the feud, and the fact that Prometheus was finally ready to tell him the secret, to reveal the name of the woman whose son would overthrow a god. Her name was Thetis, the sea goddess, the divine nymph that both Zeus and Poseidon had been pursuing. Both of them had desired her. Both would have fathered a child with her. And that child, according to the prophecy, would be more powerful than his divine father, would overthrow him, would repeat the pattern. Prometheus told Zeus the name. Zeus immediately arranged for Thetis to marry a mortal, a human king named Peleus. The marriage of Peleus and Thetis, the wedding that all the gods were invited to, except Eris, the goddess of discord, who showed up anyway and threw a golden apple, inscribed to the fairest, which led to the judgment of Paris, which led to Helen, which led to Troy, which led to 10 years of war, which produced the child Thetis bore to Peleus, Achilles, who was destined to be greater than any mortal, but not greater than a god, because Thetis married a mortal, because Prometheus told Zeus her name, because Zeus chained Prometheus to a rock for 30,000 years, because Prometheus stole fire, because Zeus took it away, because Prometheus tricked Zeus at a sacrifice. The entire chain of events that produced the Trojan War traces back to a god chained to a mountain, who held a secret for 30,000 years. But here is what most people never ask about this story. After Heracles freed him, after 30,000 years, after the eagle was dead and the chains were broken, and Zeus was reconciled, what happened to Prometheus? And what does that ending mean for the story? Prometheus was freed. Heracles had killed the eagle. He had broken the chains. He had pulled the iron spikes from the rock face. And Prometheus stood on the mountain after 30,000 years and felt the wind on his body without chains holding him. But Zeus had one condition, a reminder. He could not let Prometheus walk away with nothing to mark what had happened. Not out of cruelty, because in the ancient world, a punishment that ended without any lasting acknowledgement was a punishment that had been retroactively denied, that it had happened at all, that the crime had been real, that the sentence had been valid. Zeus did not erase things. He required Prometheus to wear a ring, made from a link of the adamantine chain, set with a piece of the rock he had been bound to for 30,000 years. Iron and stone, worn on a finger, a daily reminder, not just for Prometheus, for anyone who saw it, that there had been a sentence, that it had been carried out, that whatever came after, reconciliation, honor, freedom, was built on top of 30,000 years that had actually happened. And this moment, this specific detail, is where some ancient sources trace the origin of wearing rings. The custom that became engagement rings, wedding rings, rings of office and authority, rings that mark commitments and bonds and promises, all of it tracing back, in one ancient tradition, to this. A god who suffered for 30,000 years, wearing a small piece of what had held him. Not as a brand, not as a shame, as a record. I was here. This happened. I endured it, and I am still standing. After the ring, Zeus and Prometheus were reconciled, not warmly at first, not easily, The resentment on both sides was too deep for that. Zeus had been defied by someone he had trusted. Prometheus had been tortured by someone he had once fought alongside, but gradually, over time, genuinely. Prometheus returned to the company of the gods. He was restored to honor. And down in Athens, the city that more than any other in the Greek world would become the center of arts, philosophy, democracy, and civilization. The memory of what he had done was celebrated every year. The torch race, runners carrying fire from the altar of Prometheus at the academy on the edge of the city, through the streets, into the center of Athens, passing the flame from runner to runner, a relay of fire. Every year, the potters ran, the craftspeople who needed fire to make their kilns work, the metal workers, the people who depended on fire. For their livelihoods, they ran, honoring the god who had stolen it, who had suffered for stealing it, who had held a mountain and an eagle and 30,000 years, so that they could have warmth, so that they could have light, so that they could have the tool that makes everything else possible. Every year, they ran, keeping the memory alive. Mary Shelley published Frankenstein in 1818. She was 20 years old. She subtitled it, The Modern Prometheus. Victor Frankenstein creates human life in a laboratory. He steals the fire that belongs to God, the animating force, the divine spark, and puts it into something that was not supposed to have it. And then he is destroyed by what he created. The subtitle is not an accident. Shelley understood exactly what she was writing, but she also understood something that the ancient Greeks already knew. The Prometheus myth is not really about fire. It never was. Fire is the vehicle. The story is about the specific, recurring human experience of watching someone with access to a resource that could help people choose not to share it, and about the specific, recurring human experience of someone deciding that is unacceptable, and paying the price for that decision, over and over, in every era, in every civilization. The same story keeps happening. Someone holds something people need, someone takes it from them, someone suffers for the taking. And the debate starts. Was it worth it? Robert Oppenheimer led the team that built the atomic bomb. He understood exactly what he was doing. He had read Aeschylus. He knew the Prometheus myth. He reportedly quoted Hindu scripture when the first bomb was tested. But what he was living was Prometheus, stealing divine fire, the fundamental force inside matter itself, the energy that powers stars, and giving it not to humanity in the benevolent sense, but to a war, to a military, to history. He spent the rest of his life with the weight of that. Not 30,000 years on a mountain, but the kind of suffering that does not need chains to be real. Every technology that changes the world forever comes with this question attached. Should someone have done this? Should someone have taken what was held and given it to everyone? Was the cost worth the gift? And the ancient Greeks noticed something important. They noticed that the answer is always both yes and no. Fire warms you, fire burns you. The same thing, the same gift. Percy Shelley, and Mary's husband, was so moved by the Prometheus story that he rewrote Aeschylus's play entirely. He called it Prometheus Unbound. In his version, Prometheus does not negotiate with Zeus. He does not reveal the secret in exchange for his freedom. He endures, he refuses, he resists. And eventually the whole corrupt divine order collapses. Because the kind of power Zeus represents, power held through fear, through punishment, through the credible threat of 30,000 years on a mountain, cannot last. Not forever. It collapses under the weight of its own cruelty. Shelley was writing in 1820. He was writing about the French Revolution, about the American Revolution, about the divine right of kings and the concept that power belongs to those who hold it because it belongs to those who hold it. About systems that treat their own continuation as the highest moral value. And he used Prometheus as the symbol of the force that breaks them. Not because Prometheus was perfect, not because his gift was unmixed, but because Prometheus chose. He had been inside the power structure. He had helped build it. He understood how it worked from the inside. He had fought for Zeus. He had eaten at Zeus's table. He had been trusted by the king of the gods. And then he looked at what that system was doing to the people at the bottom of it. And he decided that being on the inside of power while power does. That to people was something he could not accept. And he paid for that decision for 30,000 years. So was it worth it? The question the story keeps asking, the question that every retelling circles, the question that makes Prometheus one of the most enduring figures in the entire history of human storytelling. Was 30,000 years of daily agony worth giving fire to humanity? Here is the case that it was. Everything that fire makes possible. Every tool ever forged, every building ever built with metal, every field ever worked with an iron plough, every ship ever launched, every disease ever treated with medicine that required heat to produce, every book ever printed on a press that required fire to make its metal type, every electric light that traces its history back through generations of technology to the mastery of combustion. All of it, all of human civilization, everything we have built and discovered and survived, starts with fire. And fire came to us because one god decided we deserved it more than Zeus deserved to withhold it. By that accounting, 30,000 years is a bargain. Here is the case that it wasn't. Pandora's jar, disease, suffering, all the evil in the world that entered because of the sequence Prometheus started. The endless wars that fire has made more destructive, every weapon ever forged, every city ever burned, every nuclear weapon that is the direct technological descendant of learning to master fire, the same chain of gift and knowledge that Prometheus provided, that led to warmth and cooking and civilization, also led here. Also led to the most destructive capabilities human beings have ever possessed. Was that worth 30,000 years? And there is a third possibility, the one that Prometheus himself might give you, if you asked him. It was not about calculation, not about whether the outcome was good enough to justify the cost. He looked at people in the dark, cold, struggling, capable of so much more than they were being allowed to become. And he could not stand it, not because he had calculated the future, even though he had foresight, but because of something older than calculation, something underneath strategy and planning and knowledge of consequences. He looked at people who were suffering unnecessarily, and he decided that having the power to help them, and choosing not to, was something he could not live with, even if living with the alternative meant 30,000 years on a mountain. He chose the mountain. That is the story of Prometheus, not a rebel without a cause, not a trickster who got caught, a being of extraordinary power and extraordinary foresight, who looked at what power does when it is held without compassion and chose to be on the other side of it, whatever that cost, no matter how long. Consider what that actually means. Prometheus did not have the luxury of uncertainty. He did not comfort himself with the thought that maybe it wouldn't be so bad, maybe Zeus would be lenient. Maybe the punishment would be short. He had foresight. He knew the Caucasus Mountains. He knew the adamantine chains. He knew Kratos and Bia were coming. He knew the eagle. He knew the liver. He knew the 30,000 years. He knew all of it before he touched the fennel stalk, before he walked into the forge, before he took a single ember. He saw every morning of those 30,000 years. And he made his choice. The ancient Athenians understood what that meant. It's why they ran the torch race every year, not just to honor a myth, to remind themselves of something, that the things most worth having are often the things someone suffered to give you, that freedom and warmth and light, and the ability to build and think and make, did not arrive without cost. Someone paid, someone looked at a cost that would destroy most beings, and said, still worth it. This is why the story survives 3,000 years, not because it has a happy ending. The ending is genuinely complicated. The fire came. Pandora's jar opened. The mountain happened. 30,000 years happened. The eagle came every morning, and the liver grew back every night, and Prometheus endured. Not because he was forced to, not because he had no choice. He had foresight. He could have made a different choice at any point before he took the fire. He chose the mountain. Every day he spent on that rock was the consequence of a decision he had made with full knowledge. He had bought those 30,000 mornings with the fire, and when Heracles finally came and killed the eagle and broke the chains, and Prometheus stood on the mountain, free. The first question you want to ask is obvious. Was it worth it? And the question Prometheus would ask you back is equally obvious. Look around you. The fire is still burning. 3,000 years later, sitting here with fire at your fingertips in 1,000 different forms. The screen you watch this on, the city that powers it, the civilization that built the city, all of it running on the mastery of heat and energy that traces its history back to one god with a fennel stalk, walking down a mountain, knowing exactly what he had done and exactly what it was going to cost him. You already know the answer. You have known it your whole life. You just never knew where it came from. In this series, we have watched a warrior destroy his life through revenge. We have watched a city burn because of desire. We have watched a god choose 30,000 years of suffering over silence. Next, we look at the story that haunts all the others, the one where doing the right thing leads to the worst possible outcome, where a man runs from his fate and runs directly into it, where there is no villain, no bad decision, no moment where he could have chosen differently, just a prophecy. And the terrible, complete, utterly inevitable way it came true. His name was Olympus, and his story is the one that has no comfortable answer. That video is next. Subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you there.